Hello and welcome to this video. This is going to be an introduction to the orchestra. I'm going to go over the 4 main instrument families found in the orchestra, and then I'll also show you each of the instruments within each of those families. Before we get into that, it's good to understand the SATB writing style, otherwise known as 4-part writing. You can think of SATB from the top down because at the top you have the soprano, and then you have the alto underneath that. Below that is the tenor, and then on the bottom is the bass. As you see, there are 4 different parts here, and each one of these are associated with their own clef. As you might notice, the bass, tenor, and alto already have their own clef. The only thing that's missing is the soprano, but it's good to know that when you're writing soprano lines, you're going to be in the treble clef. So just think soprano, treble clef. So now we can see we have the treble clef, alto clef, tenor clef, and the bass clef from the top down. We're going to see how these clefs associate with the instrument families and also the instruments within the families. It's good to know that this SATB 4-part writing style is not mandatory, but it's going to help us understand the reason for these instruments. So I'm going to first start off with each 4 of the families. After I'm done discussing each 4 of the families, then in the same order, I'm going to go through each family and discuss the instruments in that family. Okay, the first and arguably the most important section of the orchestra is the string section, or the string family. We're going to understand this more when we get into the instruments, but one of the reasons why the string family could be one of the most important roles is for a few different reasons. One could be the amount of instruments. Usually in an orchestra, you will see that the majority of the instruments are string players. They make up a larger ratio of the orchestra on average. Of course, there can also be wind ensembles and other type of arrangements for orchestra, but this is on average. These are not in order of importance, but the second reason, another reason, could be the ability of the string players and the nature of the instrument and how they play with the bow. Because it's a stringed instrument and they're playing with a bow, the player doesn't ever have to take a breath of air while they're playing their instrument. They can keep playing non-stop. This leads to them being a main driving force of the orchestra in usual circumstances. And there's more reasons that I could come up with and describe, but I want to keep this a pretty brief video. But as you can see, with there being a larger ratio of players and them being able to play non-stop and just being able to play more, the dynamic of that particular section is already going to increase. When you add more instruments, it may not actually raise the amplitude of what's going on, but you will notice that it at least seems that there's a change in the dynamics when there's more instruments playing. It at least creates the illusion of a louder sound. Okay, next we have the brass family. Think of instruments that are made of brass, have that brass color, and that would be the second family that I'm talking about here. That leads us to the third family, which would be the woodwinds. These are instruments that are going to be made of wood, or at least they were made with wood at one time, and they might be made with some sort of plastic now. And then the fourth family is the percussion. And there are 2 different types of percussion instruments, and of course I'm going to get into that when I get into the actual instruments in each family. Okay, so now I'm going to get back into the string section, and we're going to be thinking about that SATB 4-part writing style where we have the treble clef, alto clef, tenor clef, and bass clef.